Can I go lights out? No human, nobody from our firm talks to you ever, and we still do your taxes? You bet we can. Can you go in and get a diagnostic from an AI? Sure you can. Can you go in and have a robot take your blood and get the diagnostic done and have a diagnosis given to you and a prescription filed, all with robotics and AI? Yes, you can. Actually, would it be pretty accurate and help you? Yes, it will. Right. But I think most hospital systems are going to say, I want a human somewhere, because I want to look at this person. I want to see their face. I want to see how they walk in. I want to see how they talk before I make that diagnostic, because I don't want to make it just off the blood work.
Well, hello, friends. Here's something that I've seen more times than I can count. You walk into a service business that's chugging along, and you realize that the whole thing really runs on just 2 or 3 key people. The people, who just know how everything gets done. And it works right up until, one of them leaves, or a big fight breaks out, someone gets poached, or really just someone critical doesn't pick up the phone on a Tuesday. That's the morning that you learn how much the company is really living inside just a few people's head. The best operators are building businesses that run on tangible, captured operational how-to, not simply relying on just a couple linchpin people. One that's built to run without those linchpin people. Those linchpin people become enhancements, but not dependencies. I'm Leighton Healey, CEO of KnowHow, and this is Built to Run. If you've been with me for a while, you'll know this show as Mission Critical. For several seasons, we went deep with restoration operators, and I loved every one of those conversations. But over time, something became clear. The biggest challenges we explored weren't unique to one industry. Every service business eventually has to figure out how to capture what its best people know, build teams that deliver when the owner isn't in the room, and use technology without losing the human judgment or touch that great work depends on. That's the same challenge we're solving at KnowHow, helping service businesses turn the knowledge in their people's heads into systems that allow the entire company to perform and scale. The conversation had outgrown the name, so the name had to grow with it. Same host, same honest questions, now a much bigger table. And I couldn't ask for a better first guest. Scott Klososky is the founder of Future Point of View, a firm that advises leading home service franchise networks, Fortune 500 companies like IBM and GM, and big brands like Marriott. He's one of the few people who can take something as abstract as where is AI headed and set it on the table where you can pick it up, turn it over in your mind, and really understand it. But Scott's not just a thinker. He's also been in the arena. He sold webcost.com for north of $100 million, took a company public at a $3 billion valuation, and sold another to General Electric. So when he talks technology, he's talking from lived experience. In this episode, he differentiates between the data your systems collect and the knowledge your people carry in their heads. We also get into why that knowledge might one day belong on your balance sheet, how much of any job should stay human, and the 3 things he'd hand a franchise leader who knows they're behind and has no idea where to start in this whole conversation about AI. If you've ever laid awake wondering, what walks out the door the day my best person retires? Friend, this one's for you. So let's get into it. Well, hello, friends. I am on with someone who I admire and one of the few speakers, thinkers, leaders, entrepreneurs that really caused me to sit back in my seat and say, how that really makes tangible something that seems so intangible right now. I'm on with Scott Klososky. Scott, welcome to the podcast. It's so great to have you here. I want to provide a bit of an introduction to you in a moment here. Here's my question for you. What's something, because AI is moving so fast, what's something you're excited about today?
Well, it just happened yesterday, but Yesterday, the company Thinking Machines came out with really their first product, so to speak. And their first product is all focused on how AI interacts with human beings. And so instead of building, another AI model that would compete with Claude or ChatGPT, Thinking Machines, which is run by a woman that was very high up at OpenAI for years and years. Thinking Machines is focusing on the interface between humans and AI. And so they really started tweaking things like natural language is not just that you can talk to an AI tool, but while you're talking to it, it is also processing in the background. It doesn't do things step by step. So you can be talking to it and it will already be engaging doing the work and also be engaging thinking about what its answer is to you all at one time. So that's one aspect of it. Was they basically built it so that it could listen, translate, research, do work all at the same time while you're interacting with it, which is, by the way, just the way humans work, right? So while I'm talking right now, Leighton, you're thinking, part of you's listening to me, but part of you's thinking about what the next question is, right? Yeah. So they built an interface that could do that, but they also built an interface that was visually aware. So it can watch the screen or it can watch the interaction with the human to be able to see things like, oh, well, other people have joined the video, right? Or the humans, look on their face, about whether they're maybe kidding about what they're saying or not kidding. So you can wrap that all up of they're building a more relational front end for AI tools that could make the interaction much more verbal and kind of in person, the way we interact as human beings. So I love that when I saw it yesterday.
Yeah. A much trimmed down analogy is it's that classic, what's for lunch as you're sitting in the church pew, it's your mind being present as it computes. And so that multi-level those layers of consciousness and processing that allows you to be, truly human. It'll be interesting to see in those more human interfaces if we start to develop conflict, like relational conflict with AI, because they're like, I don't want to achieve that outcome or act on that prompt until we resolve this thing that's between us. I wonder if conflict will arise and we'll have to, resolve conflict with our computing machines to really get the full throttle horsepower. Apple always gets a dig for introducing things that reduce the capacity of their batteries or their compute chips to get us to the next thing. I wonder if AI will introduce relational conflict that will throttle compute until we, resolve things with them. But anyways, maybe I'm going in a different direction.
Or topics. I was helping some people in a workshop with AI the other day, and an AI came back and said, I'm not going to answer that question. And it was really interesting because they had asked for something about their competitor. And they were like, hey, give me the names of my competitors, people, because I'm going to try to recruit them away. And the AI tool said, no, I'm not going to do that for you because I think that breaks ethics. And this was a corporate situation. And the AI knew enough about the corporate ethics to say, I'm not going to do that for you, but I will do this and this. And they were fascinated and I was fascinated, right? That the tool, and we had built this tool with them, that the tool had enough ethics built into it that it said, that's not illegal. It's not illegal to go get you the names of your competitors' employees. I'm just not going to do it, right? I find it to be an ethical breach. This is what an AI was saying to a human. So as we make the interface much more, let's say, adhering to human rules, right? Or human patterns, we are going to get into some things where the AI tool will refuse to answer a question or doesn't like your approach to something, and it will tell you that, and you may not like it.
And it makes me think about, I'm not the only leader whose Claude bill right now is like skyrocketing as team members get approved for use cases of Claude or whatever tool that they're using to augment their work. And, as you're talking about it, one thing that just occurred to me is if I'm approving these Claude accounts and I'm paying for them, I should have, maybe I'll pose it. Maybe I should require them to upload a certain set of parameters that includes the company values, some of the company ethics statements and say, hey, you need to pre-train. If I'm paying for that, the company's paying for that, you need to pre-train it on these directives to ensure that the outputs also comply with the things that we value and hold dear.
Yeah,
I
well,
got some homework already.
since you said Claude, Bill, I mean, remember Anthropic has the concept of the AI Constitution. And so we've been telling our clients for probably a year that you have to build your own AI constitution and you have to upload it into AI tools that you build. Right. And so that's just I know a lot of companies haven't thought about that. They don't think about that when they think about AI governance, but we always recommend that is, hey, you need to build your own AI constitution for your company, your organization. And then every time you build an agent, every time you build an AI tool, you upload that constitution and say, hey, this is our AI constitution. This is what we want you to live by. And then that will give unique aspects, right? And unique ethical, unique cultural aspects to every AI tool that you build. So I'm all for having an AI constitution and uploading it into everything you build so that the AI reflects your culture, reflects your corporate values.
We have an initiative like that in motion right now. Let's come back to that because I think that I'd love to get your perspective on what that looks like done right and where it introduces healthy guardrails and where it may introduce unnecessary guardrails. But Scott, let me provide a bit of an introduction here. Scott is the founder of Point of View, a digital strategy firm advising Fortune 500s like IBM, GM, Marriott, and you were the day 3 general session speaker at IFA last year. They had you back this year, IFA being the International Franchise Association, one of the largest associations in the service sector. And that's where you and I engaged. And I feel as though, this may be a bit of a silly example, but I feel as though KnowHow, because we've been really focused on digitizing institutional knowledge and capturing that very tacit, skill-based knowledge that's, kind of walking out the door in the Chuck and Sheilas and bringing it in a way that the company can not only preserve it, not only the way that Chuck can have a legacy, but also the way that it can be formatted in a manner that appeals to, a 20-something technician coming in who speaks Spanish at home, right? Chuck has only ever spoken, explained things in, tailgate truck English, But I feel as though there have been times where we're kind of like the musician playing out in the street and a lot of people are kind of walking by and some people stop and listen and some people actually throw a couple bucks in the guitar case. When I was listening to your presentation, it's like I heard a song that like harmonized with what we were trying to do, except yours was much more, you had all these robust layers and you had a rhythm section at the same time. And so I was really drawn to it. And one of the things I think is important for our listeners to know is that as much as you are a brilliant thinker, you have been in the arena. You've been a long-time operator. You sold webcast.com for well over $100 million. You took Acme Technologies public through a $3 billion valuation, and you turned around Critical Technologies into an exit to General Electric. So you understand not only the technology, but also just some of the operational challenges that these organizations run into. When did you first develop a passion for understanding the intersection between knowledge and technology?
When I first started in 1980, 81 with technology, I taught myself how to program in BASIC. And I was learning how to do things. I was writing software for the company that I work for to be able to take care of problems for the company. I remember one of the first things I wrote was an inventory program. It just made the process of inventory a lot better. And then people could search and find anything in the inventory. It was like early days for me. I was 18, 19 years old. And I started to see that, wait, I could sit down at this machine and I can write code that holds information for people, and then delivers information back. So it's not all on paper sitting in filing cabinets. So I think it was that far back for me. But then when I realized that we were going to be able to build intelligence into systems, and I'm talking back in, the teens, back in 2003, 15, 16, 17, 18, right? Where maybe we weren't really building AI, we were just building really sophisticated algorithms. But, I started to see, wow, it's not just that we can build and hold information, we can build and hold knowledge. And knowledge is different than information. Knowledge is different than facts, necessarily. We could hold knowledge or intelligence in machines. So then I got even more excited, and I knew, because AI, the term was around back then, of course, So I knew someday we were destined to have a synthetic intelligence. And I was excited about it early. And then when it blossomed at the end of 22, from that month, November of 22 to today, it's been a whole different world for me. Like, it's a whole different world. And I love it. I'm fascinated by it. It frightens me sometimes, about what happens with it in the wrong hands. But that's kind of been the journey. Is my whole adult career has been fascinated with the power of being able to hold data or hold information and deliver it, and then to be able to hold knowledge and intelligence and then deliver it.
You wrote a piece recently called Building Towards an Organizational Mind. And I want to read something from your piece that I think echoes quite nicely a distinction that you're making right now, because you're distinguishing between data and knowledge. So let me read that for our audience, and then I'd love for you to just unpack that a bit, because I think everyone listening has probably heard someone from a stage or someone in a book, one of those like punch out, 36 font punch outs in the book that says data is gold. You're drawing a distinction here. You say this in your piece, again, building towards an organizational mind. Data is what your organization collects. Knowledge is what your organization understands. Systems like your CRM, file repositories, accounting software hold data, but your team and your most experienced leaders hold knowledge, the instincts, the pattern recognition, the judgment built from thousands of decisions made in context over years. That kind of intelligence doesn't live in a database. It doesn't transfer through a software license. Interesting. So unpack that for us. What does that mean for a lot of our audience are large multi-location service firms?
I often have a hard time getting people to separate in their minds the difference between data and knowledge or intelligence. Because knowledge is only a piece of intelligence, right? So, but let's just talk in terms of data and knowledge. They believe they in their minds think that, okay, I have a database and it has a bunch of information into it. Well, that's knowledge. Like, well, that isn't knowledge, right? That's just information and facts. Knowledge is another level up from that, right? That starts to add in other components around what that is. So, for example, a tomato is a fruit, right? But you wouldn't put it in a fruit salad. Okay, well, it isn't the data that would tell you not to put it in a fruit salad, because the data says a tomato is a fruit. It's the knowledge that, hey, wait a minute, it's not sweet, right? It's not a good component in a fruit salad. So anyway, it's really important for people in the franchise space, the business world in general, to be able to separate that information and data is an asset. That's an asset. It's a very powerful asset. It's an asset. Another asset is knowledge and intelligence, right? That's also an asset. It is a different asset. It isn't held in a database. It flows between people and between things much easier than data flows between people and things. And so that's the point I'm making is, if you're going to build an organizational mind, right, a synthetic organizational mind, you have to understand the difference in the two assets. They're both valuable, but they are different assets. As different as, let's say, cash, dollars, I've got $100 bills, and gold, right? Those are both assets. They are very different assets.
And when I think about many of the individuals we interact with, I don't think this will surprise you, is that if there was a trigger event that brings us to the table, typically it's a well-established, well-respected home and commercial service or construction service company who recognizes that they need to really think strategically about everything you're describing, and they bring in a CIO, a CTO, a VP of AI. One of the things that you talked about there is the different asset classes. Give me your take on this, Scott, because one of the things I've challenged my team with at KnowHow is I said, we need to help our customers get their knowledge to such a tangible place as an asset that it can show up as an asset on their financial statements, something that they can truly quantify, something that's been, just kind of smoke and wind in their organization, and now it's truly something tangible. Do you think that's achievable?
Years ago, I told people that I thought data should be on a balance sheet because it is an asset. People thought, well, you're crazy. You're never going to be able to hold data on the balance sheet as an asset. It's invisible. It's not tangible. And then there were bankruptcies filed where companies like Radio Shack sold their data. And so then people are like, oh, wait a minute, the data's got an intrinsic value. It actually could be claimed as an asset. So I believe that actually the accounting world will at some point agree and allow data to be held as an asset. And it's the same thing. If you really want to think crazy thoughts into the future, it's like, okay, well, again, the organizational mind will be thought of as an asset. Like you'll be able to sell that asset to another company. And so then people will go, oh, well, synthetic intelligence also can be an asset. Right now, human intelligence, it's an asset. It's in our humans, right? So if you want it, you have to take our humans, right? But synthetic intelligence would be in models and systems and agents. And so we could actually sell that, right, to other people. So I 100% believe that data is an asset. It's got intrinsic value. It costs you money to put it together, and it's got intrinsic value. Same thing with synthetic intelligence. Synthetic intelligence costs you money to harvest and to hold and to deliver. And that synthetic intelligence is an asset. Now, we can go all the way to just saying, is ChatGPT, is that an asset for OpenAI? Well, of course it is. I mean, of course it is. Well, what is it? It's a model that they've trained. It's an AI model that has intelligence built into it. Are they claiming that as an asset on their balance sheet? Of course they are. I mean, they are, but they're claiming it because they're saying it's a product, right? So that's how they claim it's an asset. But I think any franchisor that uses your tools to store knowledge, what they have now stored in your tools, that is an asset that I would argue could and should be on a balance sheet.
As you're talking about that, probably the fastest direct route from where we are now to it truly being an asset class is just maybe getting the IRS on board.
Yeah. Or the AICPA, right? And changing the FASB regulations, either one, right? And I think that will happen. I think that's just a matter of time. We've seen this kind of thing before where it takes a decade or two sometimes for a government entity, to be willing to move in this kind of direction, which is fine, is that they should be deliberate, but I think it's probably just a matter of time.
Just to kind of dwell on this for one moment before I want to talk about a topic that you've really put a lot of thought into around, you call it humology. And so I want to unpack that. I think it's very compelling and very timely. We engage with organizations, and there's a lot that we've done from a generative approach to make it very easy to, just point your device at Manuel, your top installer, and as he's just doing what he's doing, he's explaining what he's doing, and he's installing the thing. Our technology is building the SOPs, capturing the transcript, training the models. It's, making it translatable to the Ukrainian worker on the next job site. We've done a lot to really help to navigate that. But even that, that's a lift for some organizations that some organizations aren't used to. Oftentimes, I get asked this question is what's the future of franchising? What's the future of these type of models? And sometimes I wonder if the organizations that actually have made the investment in the institutional knowledge will ever introduce almost like a new version of franchising where they almost begin licensing their knowledge models to junior players, and actually turning that, going from how could this ever be an asset class to now it shows up as a revenue line. What do you think about that?
I have a theory that you got to look at AI in 3 layers inside of organizations. One layer is just your human advancement, right? So how do all of our employees use AI tools to amplify what they're doing? That's a bottom layer. Next layer up, AI automations. So this could be agents, bots, GPTs, whatever word we want to put on it. But you have AI automations, and then you have a top level, which is customer facing AI, or we could say customer and franchisee, right? Facing AI tools, right? So that's the way I kind of look at, AI from a revenue generation. If you understand that model of, okay, well, how do I use AI to advance my employees' personal work? How do I use AI tools to build a bunch of automations and agents? And then how do I build AI that's customer facing, which means AI that's delivered in your products if you sell products, AI that can help with services, right? Just deliver services between you and a customer, or AI that can help in the relationship between you and your customer. That top layer of customer facing AI, that is where it will be central to revenue generation. I do think then there you'll be breaking out, well, what revenue is being generated through AI services, right? Or augmented through AI services. Some companies will want to break that out. So if you're a retailer and you are doing e-commerce, okay, you might want to break out e-commerce at my stores, like Walmart, right? E-commerce at my stores versus e-commerce that comes through an AI tool. But even a restaurant, right? There's a number of people in the haircut space, right? Where the way today people, they decide to connect with you first and then try to make an appointment or buy something. But what happens when you're just talking to your AI and just saying, I need lunch, right? Who can get me lunch the fastest? Or what is the best, healthiest lunch I should get today? And your AI assistant is making that decision and then just getting that food for you.
Or with your knowledge of the diet and the macro mix I'm on, or my recommendations from my doctor or my nutritionist, organize something for lunch that is going to meet that.
Exactly. I'm not worried about where it's coming from. I'm not worried about anything else. I'm just worried about, I need these macronutrients. I need them in this time frame at this price. You make the decision on the restaurant. Well, think about it with something like haircuts. I'm very familiar with Great Clips and Sport Clips and the people in the space. Right now, you make a choice of who am I going to? And you usually make that choice based off of past behavior and or how close is it to you, right? But when you live in a city, there's 7 locations, right, within X amount. And your real issue is time, right? How can I get a haircut now? Right? How can I get in my car and go now and sit down and get something done? So how long do you just tell your AI assistant, yeah, I need to get a haircut, make an appointment, tell me where I need to go, right? It just does it. So anyway, it's a long way of saying, your question about breaking out revenues, I think that's going to be a natural thing for franchisors and other folks, banks, CPA firms, where you're really going to want to see how much of my revenue was human engaged and how much of my revenue was synthetic engaged. And that'll be a natural thing for you to break out.
Many listeners will appreciate this when you talked about banks. And I don't think the difference, I think we could probably relate this to a service provider letting the customer know that we have to make an appointment for an estimate, and it's going to take 2 hours or whatnot. But I know when I'm talking to my bank and they say, what you're requesting is going to require that you make a meeting, you schedule a meeting with some person from our branch, and you're going to have to coordinate it during the odd hours that our bank is even open these days, in this digital world. And they can't meet with you until this time. I mean, I would love for a prompt to come in and say, or for $19 or for $47, we can just do it this way, right? And I would say, oh, here's my credit card, right? And I think there's those trade-off moments of time versus convenience that I think aligns with what you're saying right now, Scott.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so important in the AI world from a strategy standpoint, right? It's so important to be able to step back and just understand we're building and perfecting synthetic intelligence. When you have a synthetic intelligence, what are all the things you're going to be able to do with it that you can't do today? Either because the limits of human intelligence or because, the humans only work for 8 to 10 hours a day, So it is important to really step back and say, in any interaction with a bank, with the government, with anyone, I had to get a passport the other day. I had to renew my global entry the other day. Like all things that, take a while. You're going to fight through online things with the government, and hopefully you don't have to make an 800 call. Any of these interactions, you have to start asking, when we have synthetic intelligence, how does this interaction change? And then what new products, what new services? As you said, in some cases, I'll pay a synthetic $20 to go take care of a problem so that I don't have to.
Well said. And I put myself in the shoes of some of our clients, and they're listening to what you're describing. It makes me think about something one of my boys, my 5-year-old, said. And he asked me a question at the dinner table one day, and he said, Daddy, when I'm an adult, will you ever come visit me? And I said, his name's Johnny. And I said, Johnny, not only will I visit you, but you'll come back from the fire station. He wants to be a firefighter. You'll come back from the fire station, you'll open your door, and you will smell cheeseburgers in the backyard. And you'll walk to the back, and you'll see me there making cheeseburgers and fries. And then you'll look, and there will be your brother. His brother's name's Augustine. And there will be Gus. And we'll say, hey, let's have supper and hang out. And he got so excited, he said, I want that, And I think many people that are listening to what you're saying, they're saying, Scott, I want that, right? Like you've painted a compelling vision. So let's just start with the knowledge. So, if I'm a brand with 100 locations, let's say, where does my knowledge actually live today? And I guess where should it live in, say, 12 months?
I want to answer your question. I'll answer it, but let's make a distinction between knowledge and intelligence. Okay. So those are two different things. Knowledge is a component of intelligence. And so the reason I'm making that distinction is it isn't just that your knowledge will be somewhere, that you will have synthetic intelligence somewhere. And intelligence is the combination of knowledge and inference, right? The ability to infer, and then creativity or innovation, and then the ability to self-learn. So, right, add all that up, now you have intelligence. Back to your question, just knowledge that will be held in technically in AI models, but those models would be embedded in agents, and embedded into software. So knowledge, synthetic knowledge, right? That will be embedded in many different things. So you'll have general, let's take some examples. You'll have all the general overall knowledge of a franchise system or franchisor. You'll have all of that general knowledge in one place. That will be in a model, right? That employees and franchisees can access and ask it any question, interact with it, gain any information on the history of the organization, all the people who work there, all the rules, all the operational SOPs, everything. So that's where that will be held. If you think about the knowledge that agents have, right? Agents will have knowledge that they need to be able to perform their tasks, right? To be able to behave in the way that you want them to behave. So they will have a subset of knowledge for just what an agent needs to know, a lot like a specialist human, right? That just needs to know the things that they specialize in. Then you will have knowledge built into software systems where we haven't had that before. Software systems were very mechanical. They're very data oriented. We managed transactions. We held the information from the transactions. We did reports. We spawned workflows, right? So now you will have intelligence built into the software layer in some cases, so that when a transaction is done, an intelligence could see it and then go take a bunch of other actions. So I look at synthetic intelligence as being woven in, right? Hence knowledge being woven in to different tools based on, what we're doing with those tools.
Now, good segue to something that I think has been really part of your um, core work is something you call humology, this balance between human effort and machine effort, creating this kind of augmented process approach. Um, help us understand. So, define that humology and give us some examples of what's the impact of that thought for service companies that put crews and trucks out on the road.
So humology, let's start with there's a scale, right? And the problem that humology solved is we have this vocabulary, something's automated or it's not automated, or even we might say it's partially automated. So we wanted to really have a much cleaner way to talk about how much human and how much technology is involved in anything, in a company, in a process, in a job. So there's a scale, H 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, going out from the middle. That's more and more use of human. T 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that denotes more use of technology. Now you have a vocabulary to be able to say, like, this podcast is an H3. And the reason why it's an H3 is you and I are creating the content. We are completely human, right? We're not using any AI for you and I to create this content. However, we're recording it with technology. We will turn it into video and audio. We will put it out over technology, right? So if you look at the overall podcast in general, maybe it's an H2.5, it's an H3, right? So this is the concept of humology, is having more of a scale and a vocabulary to be able to identify how much human and how much technology are involved in anything. And then this becomes a tool that leaders can use to say, all right, at my company, to deliver the service that we deliver, how much human versus how much technology? So let's take a sign maker like fast signs, right? If you take fast signs, the needle's been moving, right? It used to be to get a sign done with fast signs, was it H4? It was a lot of human, just a little bit of technology. They are inextricably moving notches over, where now if you want to get a sign made and delivered, right, it's maybe H1. They are continually automating, putting AI, putting more automation into the process so that it takes less human beings to get a sign done and in your hands. So that's the concept of humology. It really at its heart is a much better way to be able to talk about how much human versus how much technology in a process, system, or job, as opposed to just saying it's automated or it's not automated. Because if we look at a job, like let's say the job of doing taxes, right, at a CPA firm, uh, that needle's been moving on the humology scale of how much human versus how much technology does the CPA firm need to do your taxes. And it's good as a leader to be able to look at it and say, you know what, we're where we want to be. We're at T2 right now. I don't want to go further than that because I want some human connection when we're doing taxes with people. So I'm stopping it at a T2. Can I go lights out? No human, nobody from our firm talks to you ever, and we still do your taxes? You bet we can. You bet we can, right? I mean, that's what, HR Block and some others are doing, right? But a CPA firm says, I don't want to do that. I want there to be 30% of the process that a human is involved in. Think about healthcare. I mean, can you go in and get a diagnostic from an AI? Sure you can. Can you go in and have a robot take your blood and get the diagnostic done and have a diagnosis given to you and a prescription filed, all with robotics and AI? Yes, you can. Actually, would it be pretty accurate and help you? Yes, it will. Right. But I think most hospital systems are going to say, I want a human somewhere, because I want to look at this person. I want to see their face. I want to see how they walk in. I want to see how they talk before I make that diagnostic, because I don't want to make it just off the blood work.
What you're describing is new. You've given kind of some tangibility to what has become a bit of a buzzword, which is human in the loop. Like, what is that human in the loop quotient? And help me just as a quick point of clarification. When you are describing H referring to human, T referring to technology, when you're referring something that's say H3T1, what's the lexicon? Is that it? Is that a Humology score? What are you calling that, Scott?
Yeah, we would call it a Humology score.
A Humology
Yeah,
score?
Leighton, I
Yeah.
don't love human in a loop. It's why why you saw me not use it, right? But the reason I don't love human in the loop, first of all, what's the loop, right? Like we name these things with these really kitschy little names. But the problem with misnaming things is you say human in the loop, and now that's a concept. It's not a descriptor. So, what's the loop? What loop,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example of that. There are different reasons why I want a human involved in something, right? One reason I want a human involved is there's parts of the process that I actually need somebody to use their hands, or a human needs to do a kind of verification, right? Or it's an authority issue, right? I can only give so much authority to an AI to automate something. I have to have a human also take some authority. And so, whether it's I need a human to do a task in the middle of a process, so there's some human in the loop, or whether it's I need a human because I want the human to make the final decision, or because the human has been given the authority through regulatory control, right? There are many different reasons why a human needs to be involved. Now, it could just be relational. Like, to be honest, I didn't need you to do this podcast. You could have sent an agent. The agent could have had a bunch of questions and we didn't need you. Okay. But honestly, it's way better with you because you're making decisions on the fly. An agent probably wouldn't make. I get to see your face, right? You're going to go off script. An agent wouldn't go off script. So I think the descriptor of human in the loop, then people go, oh, okay, well, that means a human's involved. But it doesn't say any detail at all about how the human is involved. So I just tend to not use the language because to me, it's more, is there human involved, right? Or is it a T2 or is it an H2? That tells me a human's involved, but it also tells me to what level the human is involved. And so anyway,
I think that's very helpful, Scott. And it'd be fun to almost do just like a quick lightning round with you on buzzy terms, work slop. Scott, what do you think? And just keep going through all these AI terms. Well, I have to scratch this itch. What is something in your mind in a service model? You talk about great clips. You talk about H&R Block. You think about pest control or landscaping or whatnot. What is something you think no brainer should be H4, and what's a no brainer should be like a T4?
I think no brainer H4 is franchise development, right? That the actual engagement. I mean, sure, doing the hunting for prospects, fine, use a lot of technology, right? So the actual selling of your story and the actual selling of the franchise system, don't try to automate that away. I think too many times people go overboard. The airlines went overboard trying to automate things and then it annoys people. So I think franchise development, you have to be careful about leaving the human involved and to build a relationship and to build trust. On the total automation side, I would say accounting, right? I mean, accounting is a process that we have too many people doing too many things in today: payables, receivables, audits, budgeting. I'm not trying to say get rid of people in the accounting department. What I'm saying is you really want to recharter your accounting department and redo what your human beings are doing and then what you're automating. Because right now the needle's off. Too many accounting departments have way too much human to do that task. They need to be much more automated. And then they need to have their human beings be much more proactive in the organization about what they're helping the organization with. So for example, budgeting, right? You can automate all kinds of budgeting, but the problem is when somebody's over budget, the automation isn't going to deal with that, right? You need a human to have the discretion to know, well, we should be over budget, or a human to go talk to the person that's causing us to be over budget. And so I want accounting people to be out in the field, like to be out providing value, to be doing much more predictive analytics. I want them to be much more of a proactive organization instead of one that just is reactive, sits back, does forensic accounting on everything that happened yesterday and doing too much of it by hand. So that would be a part of the franchise system that needs to go way over more towards automated and reuse what your humans are tasked with.
And do you, like Scott, um, do you recommend episodic or phase-based transitions where I want to get your perspective on the evolution of the organizational chart in a moment here? Do you typically advise phase one is going to be human, H3T1, phase two, we're going to try to work towards H2T2, and that's going to be kind of our target. We think it's a two-phase approach. Do you think about it that way?
I do. I think of it as a journey, right? In the journey of steps or a journey of phases. So I do think about it that way. And I think it's easier for humans to understand steps forward other than maybe just a big ramp forward. Steps are easier for people to understand is I take this step, then I take this step, then I take this step. So I do see operationalizing AI in a franchise system as a series of steps up.
Yeah. A couple weeks ago, I was in Savannah moderating a conversation with a world-leading behavioral scientist named Philip Jameson from Boston Consulting Group. His book with Harvard Business Review comes out next week, actually, How Change Really Works. And he talks about, as you're designing change initiatives, how sometimes resistance is really just people preserving their legacy. He talks about, these very slow, probably H5 functions of the business that really also are packaged with a lot of identity for that person, and they're going to be very territorial. I almost think, I'd love to get you back just to even talk about how you think about communicating change and getting take up from the front lines, but just give us a few brushstrokes around leaders who, again, a lot of nodding along to what you're saying, but they're just picturing, that stalwart 15-year gal in accounting, that brilliant guy on AP. They're just thinking like, but how do I have that conversation? Give us some advice.
All right. This is a whole other topic. Someday, I don't believe in change management. So I don't believe in that concept anymore or that process. I feel like the change management process is a very 1980s type of topic. So I believe in a concept called inspired evolution, where instead of the typical change management of I'm going to move your cheese, you're going to be upset, and then I work you out of your being upset. Inspired evolution is just up and to the right. It's how can we inspire that 15-year, 20-year employee to want to evolve? And evolving is different than changing. So when you say change, a lot of people are like, yeah, well, some change is bad, right? I mean, and some change is good, right? But your change is bad. Evolution is up and to the right, wanting you to evolve. I'm not asking you to go backwards. I'm not asking you to, go through a period of discomfort and everything else. I am inspiring you to want to evolve. So I believe in that process, inspired evolution. And the key part of that process is helping your people have cognitive flexibility. And so again, a long topic, but a lot of people, especially people that have been around for 20 years or a long time, they don't have a lot of cognitive flexibility. They know what they know what they believe, they have patterns that they built, habits that they built. And that's why it can even be hard for them to evolve, right? So if you take an example of somebody losing weight, right? Okay, well, if you're going to lose weight, you're going to have to burn more calories and you're going to have to eat healthier. You're going to have to change behavior, for sure. there are people that just don't have the cognitive flexibility. It's like, well, I'm used to eating what I eat every time I go to a restaurant. I'm used to eating at these times a day. I'm used to eating these portions. I'm used to not exercising, right? I mean, I have my ways I live and I'm very attached to those. Well, that's because you have very low cognitive flexibility. So
Yeah.
I believe in this world of AI, but we've seen this in technology for years. We have to help our workforce, our franchisees have a high amount of cognitive flexibility, and there are ways to help people with that. And then we have to inspire them. Like you have to inspire people to want to evolve. Somebody will choose to lose weight when they are inspired to do it. For
Yeah.
what the reason is, when they are inspired to do it, then they will start making the changes to do it.
Yeah. 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 An economist might say when the incentives are such that it rebalances the behavior or kind of weighs the behavior towards that desire. Very interesting. I in the time we have, Scott, which I know is short, I want to talk about the organizational chart of 2028. And I'd love to be able to just get your perspective on that. And if I can just layer in, to use your term, if I can just weave in some things. So oftentimes when I've been asked about like, what does the org chart in, say, a home and commercial service company look like in, say, 3 years? Oftentimes I encourage an exercise that sounds like this. Whatever you do, don't start by looking at your team and just start thinking around like, what is Mike good at? I think you have to start thinking in terms of functions of your organization and what are those functions. And then today you've given this really simple and yet really practical model of within those functions, what is the optimal Humology score, for that function? And can we start to back our teams into that? And now you have me thinking, like, is there a way for us to survey the cognitive flexibility of our current team and invest in that, and it all kind of weaves together towards one organizational chart of the future. But for you, how do you think about how leaders should think about organizational structure over the next 24 to 36 months?
First of all, I've never been a big believer in the hierarchical org chart, so I don't really do hierarchical org charts here. I probably believe more a little bit in a holacracy, so doing round org charts. I think flatter is one thing. I think another thing is we may organize org charts around the major processes in a business a bit more. So in other words, we're a consulting firm, right? So there's a people management function here. There's an operational management, and then there's a consulting delivery, and then there's a client relationship, right? Our org chart is really just those four things, right? Those are the four major components of this business. And so we got four blocks or four blobs, right? And then within those blobs, yes, there are people and there are AI tools. So within each of those blobs, there's a way to show, okay, here's what people are doing. Here's what automation, right? Or AI is doing. And so, I think the org chart of the future will have ways to distinguish what a human is doing and then what an automation or a synthetic is doing. I think we might just look at the organization differently than a hierarchy of, oh, okay, well, because, that hierarchy came from the military 1,000 years ago. Like, that's where that came from. And we never dropped it when we started building companies. And I think it's time to start dropping it and to really just look at, hey, I have major functions, not all a bunch of minor functions. I have major functions that I do at a franchisor. And so let's look at those major functions. And then let's look within each major function, what is it that the humans do? What is it that automations do, and the relationship between those? And then when I look at that function now, what I see is much more of an engine, right? And so I'm seeing an engine for that part of the business. And I would rather do org charts that way, but where you still see who the people are, you still see what the people are doing. You still see who's responsible for different things. It's just not shown in a hierarchy, and it's shown more as in series of engines that run the business.
It makes me think about something we are prone to say at KnowHow is, how do you evolve your business from being overly key person dependent, like umbilical cord dependent, to process driven and core function driven? It's one of those concepts that I think is probably more around trying to evoke a vision of what you described. So, Scott, as we close here, you use this term inspired evolution versus change management. I think that's very important to highlight that, and I'd love to delve into that in another conversation. But in the spirit of inspired evolution and the need for a vision to inspire an organization to move forward, could you give us an example, or could you give us a story of an organization where you really think that this is an organization who invested in tech readiness, they did things very intentionally, and this was the outcome? Could you paint us a picture of what this could look like when done well?
Yeah, sure. We have a client out of Atlanta that is close to $1 billion operation. And I would say they are elite at how they are applying AI and getting ready to apply robotics as well. They are very thoughtful about, let's put the governance in place of how to do something like, let's just take agents, right? What's the governance for how we're going to build agents? How are we going to educate people on building agents? How are we going to audit and keep control of agents? And then what are our goals for, how many we're going to build and what we're going to do? And then they go execute. So they're very thoughtful about the things they need to put in place before, they start on the journey, but then they've started on the journey earlier than most other companies, So they're kind of a measured twice, cut once. It's just that they measured twice and cut once about a year before almost anybody else does it. And so, that's just an example I can think of right off the top of my head. We have a number of companies, even franchisors that we are working with, that I can see that they understand the value of this, and they are somewhat methodically, strategically figuring out, where do I apply AI in franchise development? Where do I apply AI in legal? Where do I apply AI in franchise relations? Where do I apply AI with customers? How do I improve my operations? So they're just kind of breaking the franchisor, if it's a franchisor, that they're breaking it down into the major parts of our business. AI can do different things in each one of these. Let's do all of this at once. So let's harvest all the use cases we can. Let's work with each of these groups. Let's harvest, 50 to 75 AI use cases in each of these groups. And then let's build the machine to start knocking off these use cases faster than our competitors. So that's what I see that I really like out there in the market now.
So I'm a VP operations of a 200 location service firm. I've just listened to this. I pick up my phone. I call Future Point of View. I'm happy to discover that your phone answering is a H5. And so Scott answers, And I ask Scott, I just listened to you talk to this bearded, pasty white Canadian guy, and you've really inspired me. We're behind. Where do I start? What do you say?
First thing is you got to have a work session with your leadership team, and you got to get everyone on the same page about what is this? What is the AI? What's it going to do? You got to have an agreement on what is AI going to do to our franchise space in our market. You have to have agreement on how aggressive do we want to be with this tool, right? You have to have agreement on who's going to own it. Are we going to form an AI task force, right? But who's going to have the ownership of the strategy? You got to have a work session and cover these topics and get everyone on the same page. I see way too many people that have, dove into AI that they don't even have agreement on their leadership team as to what's going on, or even philosophically what AI is. Number two, you need to do some inventory of your foundation so you can do AI. What are we like in IT? What are we doing with our data? What kind of governance and controls do we have in place or do we need? You got to get your foundation set. And then you need to move on to use case harvesting. You really need to go around to your different departments, harvest lots of AI use cases so you know what you got. You know how many opportunities you have. Do those 3 steps first, and then you can move to operationalizing AI at a higher level. But you got to do those 3 steps in that order.
Well, Scott, you've inspired me. I think about the very practical opportunities for the people we serve. I think about the practical opportunities for the people I serve on my team, and how we always have to be takers of our own medicine at KnowHow. Scott, I feel as though, I'm kind of at this labyrinth that is a very good conversation and all these different routes we could go. But I think this is a good place just to stop for today. And let me say thank you. You are someone who is in high demand. I remember chatting with a member of your team, and when he told me the sheer volume of keynotes, say nothing about the talks you're pulled into, the CEO late night panicked phone call that their friend connected you with them, even just the volume of keynotes that you are doing to get your guidance out was really quite astounding. So I think you have a very timely message, but more importantly, Scott, I think that you have a way of communicating that is taking something very complex and making it understandable, And so thanks for your time. Thanks for your wisdom. If a person wants to learn more about the services you offer, where do they go? What do they do?
There's 2 things. I mean, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's always an easy way. You can talk right to me and, I can help. Or you can also go to the Future Point of View website, which is just fpov.com. And you can connect to us through the website, but you can also see a lot of what we're doing and a lot of the content that we provide out to clients and things like that. And Leighton, I appreciate you asking all the great questions. And it is true what they say about how nice people are in Canada. It is absolutely true. And so it's great visiting with you. And I'm up for anytime you want to talk about inspired evolution or organizational mind or any of these other topics. They're a podcast all on their own.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to clear my schedule tomorrow and I'll send you a text.
All right. Sounds good.
Good. Hey, keep up the good work, Scott. And you've given me and our audience a lot to think about. Have a great day. Keep it up. And until next time.
All right. See you soon.
See you soon. A big thank you to Scott for taking something so slippery and making it feel like something you can actually hold in your hands. Something that stuck with me. Data is what your company collects. Knowledge is what your company understands. Your CRM holds data, but the real knowledge, the instincts your people have built over thousands of customer calls and interactions in the field, well, that never lived in a database, and it doesn't transfer with a software license. The knowledge running your business is tucked into a handful of heads. Undocumented, it's really just one resignation away from poof, gone. Scott's bet is that it is an asset, but it only becomes an asset when one day you get it out of those heads and build it into the business. Thanks for spending time with me on Built to Run. If you take one thing with you, let it be this. Capture what your best people know, build it into your team, and put it where work actually happens. That's how the business stops running on heroes and starts running on itself. I'll see you next time.